CAADP, as we know, was signed up in 2003 by the heads of state. And one of the things we've recognized, actually coming out very, very strongly over the last 10 years, is actually the critical role of farmers in pursuing that agenda. Yes, it's about farming, it's about farmers, and it's about agriculture. And when we talk about enhancing agricultural productivity, ultimately, yes, it's across the whole value chain. In fact, it's not a question of one is more important than the other, but the farmers are a critical piece in that equation. If we talk about transformation of agricultural systems in Africa, whether you talk about policy, you talk about institutions, you talk about service agencies, you talk about knowledge support, one key player who is actually part to making that happen, but is also a target, is also a player in advancing that change, is actually the farmer. In the context of a lot of that change, a lot of that transformation has to happen within the farming community. What is this transformation and where is it going to come from? And how is it going to materialize? And therefore, what should we be doing, when and how, and by whom, in terms of delivering that change? There is a very critical responsibilities for farm organizations. I'm talking about the PAFO, I'm talking about the sub-regional farm organizations, regional farm organizations, but also the national associations, to mobilize, to facilitate dialogue, to facilitate learning, to facilitate collisions and partnerships within the farming community, across the farming community, and farmers with other constituencies. Therefore, you need an informed farming constituency. That's where the regional farm organization come in, to support that, to facilitate that, and ensure that the farmers bring that informed position into the dialogue, into the decision-making process, into the policy design process. One of the things that is very key in CAADP, and we're seeing that happening very strongly, is actually the improvements in the quality of the policy design process. What does that participation mean? Is that we want to move beyond just counting numbers. Is the quality of the participation, is the quality of the issues being put on the table. And therefore you need an informed farming constituency. And one element in there is that it's evidence-based and is demand-driven. CAADP has emphasized the issue of inclusiveness. And what that means is that you are building common position, you are building collective responsibility, you are building mutual responsibility across the whole spectrum of the agricultural value chain. Talk about inclusive development. You actually is talking about the rural communities, you're talking about the farming communities, and therefore you are saying, how do you actually engage with farmers as actually the constituents within which that transformation should change, that is moving itself from being a target for anyone's intervention to actually drivers of their own development. But I'm also talking about how actually farmers engage into business. I'm talking about how do we organize our family farms, our smallholders, that we are not saying they should all become big, but how can they become viable and profitable at their level? And that is possible. There are a lot of experiences, cases of that nature. When we look at lessons from CAADP over the last 10 years and what that means with regard to going forward, how do we position farming more and more as actually a source for wealth for the economy, for the communities? And the farmers, as I said, are going to be very critical in not just that perception, but actually making real, making happen that perception. Because it's true, it's about the kind of policies, it's about the kind of programs, but it's also about the mindset. One of these days we should be talking about farming not just as a place where you you put people that are actually poor, or farming is equal to poverty, but actually that people look out and look up to farming as a career, as business. I mean, time is gone where farming is what you do after you retire. The other aspect in terms of advancing agriculture in the next decade is the issue of leadership. Where are the farmer champions? Where are the farmers' energy in terms of being part to the equation? And in fact, inside the equation, sometimes you get engagements around farmers and farm organizations in terms of engaging government that applies or looks like is the farmers sitting outside the fence and looking inside. But the farmers have to be inside. They actually just have as much ownership, as much responsibility as government in terms of driving agricultural development. We'll also need to have the endorsement, the support, and actually the action of the farmers and farm organizations themselves. The African Union Commission and the NEPAD agency have emphasized in terms of the way forward with CAADP implementation, and this based on the lessons from the last 10 years. It is the clarity of what we want to deliver, the change we want to see in terms of tangible, in terms of measurable, in terms of, yes, the clarity of that line of sight, of that theory of change. We generated what we are calling the CAADP results framework on the outcomes in the exercise on sustaining CAADP momentum. How do we adapt it? How do we adapt the strategies to realize that vision faster and much wider, and indeed consolidate the gains we've made in the last 10 years?